Hi guys, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, my name is Eddie Roque. I'm a multimedia artist based in Los Angeles. And in this channel, I'm sharing with you my journey as a composer, photographer, and cinematographer. As an artist and creator, I believe it's very important from time to time to revisit some of your heroes. And there's nobody more important in my life and my journey as a musician, as a guitar player than Gary Moore. So I started with music by learning piano because of my father. We used to have one at home, and I will just watch him play, and I wanted to learn that as well. He couldn't teach me much, so he sent me to a conservatory. So I was 4 or 5 years old and trying to learn that thing. When I was 10 years old, I was watching TV by myself. My parents were in the kitchen. This was like after dinner, so they were still like, talking in the kitchen. I was watching TV, and then this music video came up. Was this guy with that long hair? It was kind of a black and white, but it was bluish, and in my mind he was blind because he had his eyes closed. He was kind of in a shade playing with this Les Paul. I didn't even know what was a Les Paul at that time, but when I first heard the I, as a 10-year-old kid, learning classical music and popular music, and there was like an outro, and that was just too much for me. I remember I couldn't even wait for the song, the music video to finish, and I ran to the kitchen to talk to my dad. Dad, I want to play guitar. And I need a break. So there's a difference between being influenced by somebody or being inspired by somebody. Gary was in my whole life and career as a musician. He was the only person who I can clearly understand his influence and his inspiration, because he changed me in an active way, right? I didn't care about the piano anymore. I wanted a guitar. You have to remember back in the day, way down south in Sao Paulo, Brazil, I was 10 years old, and I can't forget that. It was 1990, the first year where MTV was released in Brazil. I was hooked with some of the music videos, and out of those bands that I could never give a face to the sound, because being raised on like a radio or sometimes a vinyl, and everything down there was so hard and so challenging. From information, there's still no computers in my house or internet, no cell phones. I got my first cell phone, I was like 25 years old. The lack of information, it created that myth, right? We will hear the two-hand Van Halen thing, and we wouldn't know how does he do that. And I remember having to walk as a teenager, having to walk miles, because you will hear that, oh, there's a band on Sunday afternoons, they have a rehearsal in the garage, and the guitar player has like some pedals and some stuff, he can play those sounds. And I remember sometimes I would get on my bike and go there. Sometimes I would have to walk. And I remember if you were staring at the guy for too long, he would just, solo time, he would just turn his back on you, and there was like a crowd and a sidewalk. People would go. It was like a mini concert, those rehearsals, like garage rehearsals. So I remember those days, and I remember how hard was to my very first years trying to transcribe of the information and of the theory from piano and from the music books into the guitar. And I was playing all wrong, trying to finger the notes, and like how you do chords. It's like, oh, it's a triad, so you do like this. And I was like strumming those like three notes. I didn't know, oh, you can repeat those notes in the other strings, so it's easier to flow with your written hand. By the way, I'm a lefty. I'm playing right. I had to switch early on, but I'm a lefty playing right, just like Gary. And this is one of the many coincidences that I connected with him. I just feel like how similar, the personalities and some of the choices, like having friends and being in a band, and having to quit because you're working so hard and trying to get better and improve yourself, and you treat music so seriously, and people are sometimes doing for a different reason. And his time with, like having a feeling as a friend, but the issues with Tin Lizzy. From what I heard, like from interviews, some radio shows where he was telling why he quit in the middle of a tour, that kind of stuff. So I can only imagine like how serious he was about performing the music and the respect to the audience, and still being a professional on stage. I've been through so many similar experiences before knowing that. So he was my first guitar hero. The reason why I wanted to play a guitar, more particularly a Les Paul. I know he played pretty much everything he could. He always sounded great no matter what gear he used. I see the difference between influence is when somebody actively changes you. He influenced me because I came from piano to guitar because of him. I wanted a Les Paul because that's how I saw him for the first time. I wanted that tone because that's when I first heard him. And the playing and the bendings and the emotion, the vibrato, and everything. But then you start to understand that's the influence, right? When you want to dress like Jimi Hendrix wanting to dress like a Little Richard, Prince sometimes imitating Steve Wonder. That's the influence. Once you're mature and you find yourself, you find your own voice, you can experience other artists and not just be influenced by them. You can be inspired by them. What does that mean? As I progressed with Gary Moore as my father in music, I understood that I didn't want to learn note by note anything he was playing, because that would be just too much for me. And the pursuit of the tone and the playing. 1990, when I switched to the guitar, I didn't have even an electric guitar, right? We had an acoustic guitar laying in the basement. My dad put the strings on, nylon strings. I after a few months I switched. I put some guitar strings because I was trying to make it louder and make it a distorted sound. And then I got some issues with my hand. Doctors say I couldn't play no longer, and that's like a death sentence, right? No, I want to be a guitar player. I want to be a professional musician. There's no stopping, and that's when I switched. But sometimes I still think like a lefty, but I'm playing like this. But anyway, I never wanted to learn how to play his music. Everything I play of Gary, it's by, not just by memory, it's by how I feel. And I know I don't play exactly the same because I didn't want to copy. I really want to play his music and try to match my feeling and match my expression to what he was doing. And I never had to really learn anything note by note. Even growing up and working as a professional musician and sideman, I was very blessed and fortunate that I would get hired by people to listen to the music, learn that material in my own way. Sometimes I will learn note by note because I also had a career as a music teacher in Brazil, and it's important to ear training and know what you're doing, and some students, they really want to learn that, which was never my own interest. As a professional sideman, I wouldn't care very much in playing note by note, and I would learn some of the key moments, some of the riffs, some of the main points in a solo, for an example, and I will improvise my way around it, and people seem to like it, so there was never an issue. But I would like to play some of Gary's, some of my favorite stuff, and share with you guys a little bit of my journey, as not trying to copy or emulate his tone, because he's the foundation of like how I believe a guitar should sound. He inspired me on my own journey to put together something that works for me. It's a lifetime of inspiration to make me develop my own tone, my own sound, which when people say like, oh, you remind me of the Brazilian Gary Moore, it's a compliment. They call it influence, right? But when they recognize, they create a link, like, you sound a little bit like Gary. It's been a lifetime. Imagine you're a hostage. Somebody kidnaps you and traps you in a room with one album, and you listen to that for your whole life. You don't even play an instrument, but you know that music so well. And that's how I feel about Gary's material. I just listen to the music, and I feel that I know what he's doing, but I don't want to do the same. So let me share just a few things. I'm using my old Les Paul. I'm not sponsored or endorsed by Gibson or Marshall or anything. Alesis MIDI Verb 2, yeah, which is the same he used in many of his records. And that's it. Crunch channel and a Marshall Jubilee, Les Paul, a little bit of MIDI Verb 2. I have 4 of those guys. I have like backups. I have one that was in a rack that I was using live. I have this one here that it's like it's screwed and a desk. It's a very cheap and lo-fi, not just reverb, but I only use one preset, which I think it's the one that he used. So I was always interested in the nuances of his playing. The end of Still Got the Blues, when he switches from the neck to the bridge, and you can really hear like a little scratchy. The switch is a little dirty. And that was learning and listening to those beats and trying to like, did he just switch all the way? Did he stop in the middle and did like a 2-step movement? Because you can really hear like a vocal, like a filter, right? That opens only downstrokes or only upstrokes. I was really into understanding his choices. You can bend a note, you can slide to a note, you can hammer to a note, you can just play the note straight. Some of the things I do, once again, this is not a lesson on Gary Moore. This is just me sharing a testimonial on some of the musicians that are very important to me. I recorded some of his songs many times. There's some videos with my big band on YouTube. You will hear some of my interpretation on some of his music. But here's a little different, right? It's studio setup, and I'm just trying to share with you guys some of his style and playing that has been inspiring me for a lifetime. So like the outro on Still Got the Blues, right? So when he does the right? So when he does that, it was magical to me because I could hear it, but I didn't know that you could change pickups, right? I came from piano, then I had an acoustic guitar, and I was listening to that like, what is this? Is this like a mistake? Is this, how did he he do that, and how he came from something a lot more smooth to something so like crispy and aggressive. And I had no idea that it was something as simple as switching pickups, and that's how much we had to work in order to learn little bits of information. Right, I could have videos on that. Life as a young musician down there was not easy. I believe I could achieve, some things a lot quicker if I had access to more information. So never take it for granted. The fact that you can Google things, you can go on YouTube, and many times you can learn from the guy you like for free. I never had that in my life. So this is my take on the outro for Still Got the Blues and some of the nuances and some of the things that he does. Remember, I never try to learn note by note. This is not a guitar lesson. And he goes on and on, right? Another song was really important to me was Pretty Woman because it's the second track from the album. So every time you have like the first track, moving on, slide solo, that it's amazing. He goes like above the fretboard and then it gets so high. Pretty Woman, it showcases like how aggressive his playing was. As a young kid, I could explore some elements of my rock background into the blues. Second song, and it right, and it's a killer. So cool. I loved that so much. I don't know if that's what he does, but that's what I do. Another song is very important, Walking by Myself. Something like that. One of my favorite songs of him is Parisian Walkways. I did a version in my last album you can find here on YouTube or on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere. I was not a big fan of the studio version because it was recorded in 1978 or 79. It's very clean and it's Phil Lynott singing and has all that nostalgia, right? But over the years he developed that song live with a lot more emotion, with a huge outro, and one of his kind of trademarks, which is that sustain that he does, because you have like a few amps behind you loud enough and you can get that feedback. So it was very challenging for me because some of the songs in the album I did it live. Some I had to do remotely because it was produced, part of the album was produced during COVID. And that song in particular, fun fact, I recorded that I had COVID, and it was a weird moment, right? I was feeling like so sick. It was the last song in the album to record, and I had a deadline, and I was putting myself in that position where I need to meet the deadline because I need to make this work. When I'm producing, I'm trying to keep like a strict schedule, because producing is nothing but, managing, troubleshooting and managing someone else's schedule 24/7. And I had to manage my own schedule. But how could I do that sustain thing in my room, super sick, with like a bucket on my side? So I had the ISO box. I remember some of my early days of learning guitar, and having an acoustic guitar, you have that volume and everything, right? To the point where I got my first electric guitar, but I had no amp, and I could play was like, and you don't have the low end, you have nothing, right? It's just a solid instrument. So I remember that I had like a dresser in my room, and if I touched the guitar and that thing, part of the vibration will transfer to that, and that will become like an acoustic resonant box, and it will make it louder, and it will make it right here in my ear. So I learned how to play like, kind of touching that thing to help resonate. Here I have a cabinet and speaker inside the ISO box. So to show you guys this example and what I had to do to come up with this sustain, I have to turn my back on you guys. I'm sorry for that, but it will show the concept, right? Like this. There's no sound, right? But if I just connect it kind of like this and play, I get the sustain, right? And Gary will do like this, like raise a hand. And again. Again. And he keeps going. You got the idea. I hope you guys like this video. I hope this will inspire you, if you don't know Gary Moore, to check some of his amazing albums and work. He was more than just a blues guy. He was more than just a shredder. He was a great singer, a great songwriter, and as far as I know, somebody who truly loved guitar music and really cared about his audience and his fans. He's my hero and my biggest inspiration. So I hope you guys check out some of his work, and I hope you guys also, if you enjoyed this video, click the like below, subscribe to the channel, watch the next video that is coming up. There will be a bunch of more interesting stuff pretty soon. I will see you in the next video, but in the meantime, thank you.